Welcome to Stoic Philosophy for Life. This is not just a place to listen to books, it's a space to feel them with your soul. Here, we illuminate your mind with timeless lessons. Awaken your inner strength, cultivate self-minus discipline, and guide your journey of personal growth. Every word is carefully chosen to reach what you're truly seeking: peace, clarity, and lasting transformation. If this feels like the place for you, hit subscribe and walk this path with us every single day. Now, put on your headphones, take a deep breath, and begin the journey of renewing your mind and your life. 70 life lessons you must master to solve 93% of your problems. There comes a time in life when comfort turns into suffocation. When the routines you once depended on start to feel like cages. When the things you thought were protecting you are actually what is holding you back. That moment, often disguised as burnout, heartbreak, or an unexpected silence, is not a breakdown. It is an invitation. An invitation to stop running, stop numbing, and start facing the parts of yourself that you have spent years avoiding. Most people will not answer that invitation. They will blame the job, the relationship, the timing. They will distract themselves with noise, scrolling, working, performing anything to avoid the truth. And what is the truth? That the problem is not out there. It is in the mirror. In the habits you repeat. The beliefs you inherited but never questioned. The fears you obey. The guilt you carry. The self-minus worth you outsource. And here is the brutal honesty most people never hear until you take responsibility for mastering yourself. Nothing in your life will permanently change. So this is not just a list of advice. This is a blueprint. Wake minus up call. A challenge. These 70 life lessons are not suggestions. They are laws of emotional strength, mental clarity, inner freedom. You do not need to master them all at once, but you do need to start. Because the longer you wait, the heavier the cost. Not just in lost time, but in lost self. Lesson 1: you are not your feelings. Feelings are real, but they are not reliable. They change with your sleep, your food, your hormones, your memories. Do not build your identity on them. Observe them. Respect them. But do not let them define who you are. Who you are is what you consistently choose in spite of them. Lesson 2: you cannot control everything. But you must learn to control yourself. People will be rude. Days will be chaotic. Plans will fall apart. The only constant in life is your response. Master that, and you master your experience. Lesson 3: stop waiting for motivation. Discipline is what carries you when motivation disappears. There will be days when you feel uninspired. You do it anyway. There will be moments when it feels pointless. You show up anyway. Consistency is not about feeling good. It is about becoming someone you can rely on. Lesson 4: your standards shape your reality. What you accept becomes your normal. What you tolerate teaches others how to treat you. Stop blaming people for crossing lines you never clearly set. Lesson 5: do not confuse comfort with peace. Comfort keeps you where you are. Peace moves with you, even when it is hard. Peace is not about avoiding struggle. It is about being unshaken inside it. Lesson 6: your mind believes what you repeat. Speak like someone who respects themselves. Think like someone who expects to grow. Your inner dialogue is the script your life follows. Rewrite it with care. Lesson 7: not everyone deserves access to you. Kindness does not mean availability. Being good does not mean being drained. Protect your energy. It is not rude. It is wisdom. Lesson 8: the truth will hurt, but hiding from it will destroy you. Face it. Feel it. Learn from it. Then let it make you wiser, not colder. Lesson 9: no one is coming to save you. Read that again. No one. Your healing, your discipline, your future, they are your responsibility. And that is not a burden. It is your power. Lesson 10: learn to sit with boredom, pain, silence. Those are the places growth begins. If you keep running, you will never learn who you are without distraction. Lesson 11: your comfort zone is not safe, it is a slow death. Every time you avoid discomfort, you reinforce fear. Every time you say, "I am not ready," you delay your own evolution. You were not meant to repeat the same year 75 times and call it a life. Growth is painful, but so is staying stuck. Choose your pain wisely. Lesson 12: if you do not define success, the world will do it for you. And the world rewards the wrong things. Fame over depth. Speed over truth. Appearance over substance. You must ask yourself, what does success mean to me? And then build a life that reflects it quietly, even if no one understands. Lesson 13: the quality of your questions determines the quality of your life. If you only ask, "Why me?" you stay a victim. If you ask, "What can I learn from this?" you become a student. If you ask, "What can I create with this?" you become a master. Ask better. Grow faster. Lesson 14: you do not rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your systems. Hope is not a strategy. Willpower is not a plan. Your habits, routines, and environment will determine your future more than your intentions ever will. Build systems that make your discipline automatic. Lesson 15: stop managing time. Start managing energy. You do not have a time problem. You have an energy leak. Cut what drains you. Strengthen what sustains you. Plan your days not around how many hours you have, but how much attention and presence you can bring to what matters. Lesson 16: your ability to delay gratification is a better predictor of success than your intelligence. Anyone can want results. Few are willing to wait, work, and repeat without immediate reward. Train yourself to tolerate the quiet stretch between sowing and harvest. That is where greatness is forged. Lesson 17: you are not overwhelmed because you have too much to do. You are overwhelmed because you are breaking promises to yourself. The more things you carry in your mind but avoid in your actions, the heavier your life becomes. Do one thing, then the next, and the weight will lift. Lesson 18: everything is practice. How you wake up is practice. How you argue is practice. How you speak to yourself when you fail is practice. There is no neutral moment. Every habit is a vote for the kind of person you are becoming. Pay attention to what you are rehearsing. Lesson 19: do not expect discipline from chaos. You cannot grow consistently in a disordered environment. Clean your room. Curate your inputs. Create structure. The mind thrives when it knows where to focus. Chaos is not a badge of creativity. It is often a mask for fear and avoidance. Lesson 20: your progress is not always visible. Just because it is not dramatic does not mean it is not real. Healing does not announce itself. Maturity is often silent. And becoming someone new happens in the moments no one sees. Stop needing proof. Trust the process. Lesson 20-1: you will never outgrow the basics. Sleep. Movement. Stillness. Hydration. Laughter. silence. They are not luxury, they are leverage. Mastering your life means mastering the fundamentals on repeat. Do not chase complexity. Honor simplicity done well. Lesson 20- to most arguments are not about what is said, but how it is said. Tone is louder than content. If you cannot communicate with clarity and calm, even truth becomes harmful. Learn to speak with force and grace. Say less. Mean more. Lesson 20-3 If you cannot sit alone with yourself, you will never be free. Loneliness is not cured by company. It is cured by connection to your own soul. Until you enjoy your own presence, every relationship will be a distraction, not a compliment. Learn to be your own sanctuary. Lesson 20- for complaining is the language of the powerless. It feels good for a moment. It releases frustration. But it solves nothing. Replace it with action. With curiosity. With ownership. Your words create your world. Speak like someone building a future, not avoiding a present. Lesson 20-5 Stop expecting closure from those who never gave you clarity. Some people will never apologize. Never explain. Never grow. You must learn to close the chapter without their cooperation. Peace is not something you wait for. It is something you claim. Lesson 20-6 You cannot heal in the same environment that made you sick. This applies to people, places, habits, and mental patterns. Change your setting. Change your inputs. Change the version of you who keeps going back. Otherwise, you are not healing, you are relapsing. Lesson 20-7 Confidence is earned. You do not fake it. You do not chant it. You prove it to yourself through repetition, through through facing fear and doing the thing anyway. You do not need to believe in yourself yet. You just need to stop abandoning yourself. Lesson 20-8 Gratitude is not a feeling. It is a discipline. You do not wait for it. You practice it. Especially when life feels unfair. Gratitude is not denying pain. It is seeing clearly both the wound and the wonder. Both the storm and the shelter. Both the loss and the lesson. Lesson 20-9 Resentment is what happens when you keep saying yes out of guilt. It grows quietly. It poisons connection. And it always begins with self-betrayal. Your boundaries are not a rejection of others. They are a reclamation of self. Learn to disappoint others before you destroy yourself. Lesson 30 Nobody owes you understanding. They can love you and still not get you. They can support you and still not walk your path. You do not need universal agreement to move forward. You only need personal alignment. Stop waiting for permission. Move. Lesson 30-1 How you do small things is how you do everything. Sloppiness in the little corners of life will leak into the big ones. Excellence is a muscle. You train it in the details. In how you show up when no one is watching. In how you treat the things that do not benefit you directly. Lesson 30- to forgiveness is not saying what they did was okay. It is saying I will no longer carry this weight in my body. You forgive for your nervous system. For your clarity. For your freedom. Not for their comfort. Not for their redemption. Lesson 30-3 Every relationship is a mirror. They do not just show you who they are. They show you where you still hurt. If you're here right now, it means you're not waiting for life to happen. You're preparing for it. 2025 won't just be another year. It could be your breakthrough year, if you stay open to growth and committed to the work. Let this be your reminder you're not behind. Your E just getting ready. Where you still settle. Where you still abandon yourself. Use relationships as a reflection. Then upgrade your standard accordingly. Lesson 30- for success without peace is failure in disguise. Do not sacrifice your sleep for status. Your soul for speed. Your sanity for significance. There is no trophy for burnout. If your life looks good but feels bad, you are building the wrong thing. Lesson 30-5 silence is a power move. You do not need to defend every decision. Explain every change. Respond to every criticism. People who need constant explanation are often addicted to control, not connection. Let your energy speak louder than your mouth. Lesson 30-6 The person you become is more important than what you achieve. You might build a business and become bitter. Build a body and become arrogant. Build a following and become fake. None of that is success. If the outer wins cost you your inner truth, you lose. Lesson 30-7 Time does not heal. Perspective does. You can carry pain for decades if you never decide to see it differently. The scar is not the problem, it is the story you keep telling about it. Change the meaning. Reclaim the lesson. Move on. Lesson 30-8 Stop negotiating with your potential. You know what you are capable of. You know the gap between your current habits and your highest self. Close it. Not overnight, but with brutal honesty and quiet repetition. Every day you delay is a vote for who you used to be. Lesson 30-9 Your triggers are your teachers. The things that irritate you, fear you, anger you. They point to unhealed wounds. Pay attention. Not to shame yourself, but to free yourself. The more aware you are of what shakes you, the stronger you become. Lesson 40 You are not stuck. You are just afraid to do what needs to be done. You are afraid to leave. Afraid to try. Afraid to fail. But fear is not a reason, it is a signal. Lean in. The life you want is on the other side of the risk you are avoiding. Lesson 40-1 A bad moment does not equal a bad life. You spilled your coffee. You missed a deadline. Someone spoke to you with disrespect. That does not mean the whole day is ruined. Most people let small disruptions dominate their emotional space. But a single cloud does not cancel the sky. Learn to reset. Step outside. Breathe. Reframe. Emotional agility is more powerful than emotional intensity. Lesson 40- to not everyone is meant to understand you. And that is okay. You are not here to be universally accepted. You are here to be internally aligned. When you spend your life trying to make everyone comfortable, you betray your truth. Speak it anyway. Kindly, but clearly. If it offends, let it offend. If it frees you, let it free you. Lesson 40-3 Emotional maturity means not needing closure to move on. You may never get the apology, the explanation, the satisfying ending. Stop waiting. Closure is a decision, not a gift. Give it to yourself. Then go. Lesson 40- for the most important promises are the ones you make to yourself. When you break them, you lose trust. Not with others, but with your own soul. Start small. Wake up when you said you would. Follow through on the habit. Honor the boundary. Every act of self-integrity rebuilds your confidence from the inside. Lesson 40-5 People see you through their own filters. Their wounds. Their projections. Their fears. What they say about you often says more about them. That does not mean you ignore all feedback. But it does mean you stop internalizing every opinion. Be open. Be curious. But stay rooted in your own clarity. Lesson 40-6 saying no is a full sentence. You do not owe everyone a justification. Your energy is limited. Your time is sacred. Protect it like your life depends on it because the quality of your life does. Lesson 40-7 avoidance is not peace. It is delayed pain. The conversation you are avoiding? The task you keep putting off? The truth you refuse to face? It is still there. Lurking. Growing. Taking up space. Face it now or pay for it later with interest. Lesson 40-8 your body keeps score. Your anxiety. Your fatigue. Your chronic tension. It is not random. It is your body trying to speak. Listen. Heal. Moles. Sleep. Breathe. Your mind cannot function in a body that feels unsafe. Lesson 40-9 jealousy is a map. It points to what you desire but do not believe you can have. Do not shame it. Study it. Then use it as fuel not to compete, but to expand. Lesson 50 true strength is gentle. Loudness is not power. Control is not leadership. Real power is calm under pressure. Clarity in chaos. Kindness without weakness. Be the one who can hold both fire and softness. Lesson 50-1 control is an illusion. You plan. You prepare. You think you are in charge. And then life reminds you it is not your timeline. It is not your script. The traffic. The illness. The betrayal. The detour. Most of your suffering comes not from what happens, but from your refusal to release how you thought it would go. Surrender is not weakness. It is wisdom. It is saying I will show up fully, but I will not grip tightly. I will participate, but I will not cling. That space between control and chaos is where peace begins. Lesson 50 to the person who angers you controls you. Every time you react without reflection, you give your power away. They say something sharp. You snap. They ignore you. You spiral. But here is the truth. They are not doing it to you. You are doing it to yourself. Your emotions are your responsibility. Master your response, and you master your freedom. Lesson 50-3 your mental diet matters more than your physical one. You can eat kale and run 10 miles a day. But if you consume comparison, fear, gossip, and negativity, your spirit will still starve. Curate your inputs with the same care you would for a child, because you are still raising yourself. Lesson 50- for doubt is not a stop sign. It is a signal that you are leaving the familiar. Everyone feels doubt when doing something new. But those who succeed do not wait for its absence. They move with it. They build while unsure. They leap before they are ready. Growth is not clean. It is messy, terrifying, and sacred. Lesson 50-5 rest is not laziness. It is preparation. You are not a machine. Your worth is not measured by how many hours you grind. Learn to pause. To breathe. To reset. Burnout is not noble. It is a signal that you have stopped listening to yourself. Recovery is not weakness. It is strategy. Lesson 50-6 you cannot be everything to everyone. The more roles you try to play, the more pieces of yourself you lose. Be honest about your capacity. Be clear about your lane. Say no to good things to make space for great things. When you honor your limits, you give others permission to do the same. Lesson 50-7 Fear often wears the mask of logic. It says wait until the timing is better. Get more experience. Make a plan first. But underneath it all is the voice that just does not want you to be seen, to fail, to risk. Be careful. Not all doubt is wisdom. Sometimes it is just an old wound whispering in a convincing tone. Lesson 50-8 You do not need a new life. You need new eyes. The love is still there. The opportunity is still there. The strength is still there. But you have been too distracted to notice. Gratitude is not about ignoring pain. It is about seeing clearly. And when you start seeing clearly, your life begins to expand. Lesson 50-9 Your triggers are not your fault, but they are your responsibility. You did not choose the wound, but you must choose the healing. Waiting for others to never touch your sore spots is not liberation, it is codependency. The work is to build resilience, not walls. To be touched and remain calm. To be shaken and still return to center. Lesson 60 The universe does not speak in language. It speaks in nudges. In repetition. In unease. That job that keeps draining you. That friend who constantly crosses your boundaries. That exhaustion that returns every Sunday night. That is not coincidence. That is communication. Stop dismissing what your soul keeps trying to tell you. Lesson 60-1 Clarity feels like peace. Confusion feels like chaos. If you are constantly torn, doubting, spinning, it is not alignment. Your body knows before your mind admits. Listen to the tension. Trust the calm. Sometimes, clarity is not found through thinking more. It is found by removing the noise. Lesson 60- humility is power in disguise. The loudest voice is not always the wisest. The person who can admit, I do not know, is often the one most ready to grow. Ego resists change. Humility invites it. Let go of needing to be right, and you open the door to becoming real. Lesson 60-3 Healing is not linear. One day you feel free. The next, it all comes rushing back. That does not mean you failed. It means you are human. The wound is deep. The layers are many. Celebrate progress, not perfection. Stay the course, even when it loops. Lesson 60- For not every emotion needs expression. Some feelings just want to be felt. You do not need to react. Post. Respond. Explain. You can let it pass like a storm. Honor the sensation. Breathe through it. But do not give it a permanent voice just because it was loud for a moment. Lesson 60-5 Most people are not rejecting you. They are projecting onto you. Their fears. Their failures. Their unprocessed pain. Do not take it personally. And do not make it your job to fix it. Your responsibility is to stay grounded in who you are, not who they need you to be. Lesson 60-6 Let people go with grace. Some exits are necessary. Not everyone belongs in your next chapter. That does not mean they were a mistake. They were part of the lesson. Bless them. Release them. Make room. How many years have passed where you promised yourself change, but drifted back into comfort? This time, it's different because you're still here. You're listening, you're learning, and most importantly, you're not quitting. And that's what separates wishful thinking from real transformation. Lesson 60-7 Wisdom is the ability to hold two truths at once. I am grateful, and I want more. I forgive you, and I choose distance. I am afraid, and I am taking the leap. Life is not black or white. It is complexity. Hold it gently. Lesson 60-8 If you want to feel different, you must act different. You cannot think your way into a new identity. You must behave as if you already are that version of yourself. Even when it is uncomfortable. Especially then. Action reprograms belief. Lesson 60-9 Love is not enough. You can love someone deeply and still be incompatible. Still be out of rhythm. Still be unsafe together. Love is the seed. But the soil is respect, timing, alignment, and effort. Without those, even the strongest love will wilt. Lesson 70 Mastery is not a finish line. It is a practice. You do not arrive. You repeat. You return. You fall off and recommit. Every day is a rehearsal for who you are becoming. And every small choice is a declaration I am not going back. You have heard the lessons. 70 truths that, if mastered, would change everything. But hearing them is not enough. Most people hear wisdom and applaud. Fewer reflect. Even fewer act. But the rarest, almost sacred, are those who embody. Who carry the truth not in their mouths but in their movements. Who speak less and live more. That is where transformation happens. Not in what you know, but in how you show up. Because the problem is never knowledge. It is inconsistency. It is self minus betrayal. It is the gap between who you say you are and what you keep choosing when life gets hard. So let us start here. With honesty. What are you still tolerating? What habits do you still protect even as they drain you? What parts of your identity are you still clinging to, even though they no longer fit who you are becoming? Most people are not stuck. They are addicted to familiarity. They say they want growth, but what they really want is change without discomfort. Evolution without loss. Healing without accountability. And it does not work that way. Because real growth is death and rebirth. The death of an old self. The funeral of old stories. The burial of victimhood, excuses, and delusions. And then the painful, slow, sacred process of becoming. That process is quiet. Unseen. You will outgrow people. Habits. Versions of yourself that once kept you safe. It will hurt. But staying small hurts more. Staying where you do not belong kills something in you slowly. The fire. The presence. The integrity. And that is too high a price to pay for comfort. So instead you rise. But you rise differently now. Not like before. Not out of fear or urgency or to prove anything. You rise with clarity. With structure. With discipline that does not depend on mood. You rise with rituals that ground you. You rise not just for yourself, but because when you live in truth, others feel safe to do the same. That is how legacy works. Not by shouting, but by showing. Quietly. Consistently. Powerfully. Now you begin to integrate. Not by adding more, but by subtracting. Subtracting what no longer aligns. Subtracting what steals your peace. Subtracting the noise, the pretending, the proving. And what remains is essence. What remains is enough. So what does this look like? It looks like waking up without reaching for your phone. It looks like breathing before reacting, stretching before scrolling, journaling instead of complaining, protecting the first hour of your day like it is sacred because it is. It looks like keeping your word, especially when no one is watching, especially when it is hard. Because every time you follow through, you rebuild trust with yourself. And self minus trust is the foundation of all peace. Without it, you will always feel unsettled no matter how successful you become. Integration looks like boundaries, not walls. Boundaries with your time, your energy, your mind. Saying no more often. Saying yes only when it is aligned. Releasing the guilt that comes with disappointing others. Remembering that you were not born to manage other people's emotions. You were born to live with integrity. It looks like treating your body like a home, not a project. Feeding it not to punish, but to fuel. Moving not to burn calories, but to feel alive. Resting not because you earned it, but because you are human. It looks like silence. Not as avoidance, but as medicine. Sitting in stillness. Letting your thoughts land. Listening not to reply, but to understand. Returning to yourself again and again until peace becomes your baseline. Until nothing external can unseat your inner steadiness. This is the life most people dream of, but few are willing to build. Not because it is unreachable, but because it is inconvenient. Because it requires the daily discipline of returning. To the breath. To the truth. To the decision that says, I will no longer betray myself to belong. I will no longer perform for people who do not even know who they are. I will no longer outsource my worth to likes, attention, or approval. I am already enough. But I am not done becoming. And that is the balance. Content, yet committed. Grateful, yet growing. Still, yet strong. That is what integration looks like. Not perfect, but real. And real will fix more than you ever expected. You have come far. You know the lessons. You have practiced the habits. But life is not just about knowledge or momentum. It is about mastery. And mastery begins where motivation ends. When the high wears off. When no one is watching. When you wake up tired, triggered, or uncertain. That is the proving ground. That is where your training shows. So now it becomes about one thing: emotional responsibility. Because until you take ownership of your inner world, you will always be at the mercy of the outer one. You will blame the message instead of regulating your reaction. You will resent the world instead of adjusting your boundaries. You will wait for peace instead of building it. Emotional mastery does not mean being positive all the time. It means learning how to respond instead of react. It means learning how to hold anger without letting it leak. How to feel sadness without spiraling. How to process triggers without projecting them. This is not passive. This is power. Quiet, disciplined, embodied power. The kind of power that pauses before speaking. That breathes before choosing. That acts from clarity instead of compulsion. Most people never get here. They live in reaction. Someone says something, they explode. A plan changes, they fall apart. A person leaves, and they collapse. But you are not here to collapse. You are here to stay centered. Even when things fall apart. Especially then. That is how you become unshakable. Not by avoiding storms, but by becoming the kind of person who remains rooted when the storm hits. The person who does not need everyone to agree to feel clear. The person who does not need life to go as planned to remain steady. The person who knows how to return to self when the world is loud. This is the kind of discipline that cannot be faked. You earn it through repetition, through small moments of choice. Do you respond to that text out of ego or out of integrity? Do you stay in the argument just to win, or do you exit with grace? Do you hold that resentment, or do you name your truth and release it? These are the micro-minus decisions that shape your nervous system. And your nervous system shapes your entire experience of life. So train it. Train yourself to return to calm. Not because everything is okay, but because you choose not to add chaos to chaos. This is where you shift from passive consumer to conscious creator. From victim of emotion to steward of energy. From someone who reacts to life to someone who leads themselves through it. That is leadership. Not titles. Not authority. But the ability to carry yourself through difficulty without collapsing into old patterns. That is how you lead your life. And when you lead your life, life begins to respond differently. Not because circumstances change, but because your orientation does. The same challenge lands differently when you meet it from stability. The same disappointment feels lighter when you do not attach identity to it. You realize this hurts. But it does not define me. This surprises me. But I will adapt. This angers me. But I will respond, not erupt. That is real maturity. That is the fruit of emotional mastery. And with it comes freedom. Because now your peace is no longer conditional. It does not rely on who texts back, who approves, who stays. It is yours. Built from within. Cultivated with care. Protected by boundaries. That kind of peace makes you magnetic. Because people can feel when you are not grasping. When you are not chasing. When you are not looking for the outside to fix what the inside must hold. And that kind of peace is not born from escaping pain. It is born from facing it. From feeling it fully, letting it move through, and then choosing differently. Choosing not to become bitter. Not to stay small. Not to hide behind sarcasm or silence or pretending. Choosing truth. Choosing growth. Choosing the kind of stillness that makes you dangerous to anything that feeds on your reaction. That is the goal now. Not comfort. Not control. But capacity. Capacity to hold both joy and sorrow. Capacity to witness your patterns without shame. Capacity to act from presence, not panic. That is mastery. And it does not look like perfection. It looks like self minus trust. It looks like knowing that even if today is messy, you know how to return. You know how to repair. You know how to breathe before you break something you cannot take back. So let this be the next level of your practice. Do not just learn the lessons. Become the person who lives them even on your worst day. Especially then. Freedom is not doing whatever you want. That is impulse. That is reaction. That is the illusion sold by a world addicted to distraction. Real freedom is doing what is right, even when it is hard. It is staying when it would be easier to run. It is speaking gently when anger feels justified. It is being fully present when your old self wants to escape. Because escape is a habit. You escape through scrolling. Through overthinking. Through being busy all the time. Through blaming. Through chasing the next goal, the next relationship, the next version of yourself that might finally feel like enough. But every time you run from the moment you are in, you reinforce the belief that this moment is not safe. That who you are right now is not enough. That stillness equals stagnation. But it is a lie. Stillness is where your power lies. And stillness is not the absence of movement. It is the presence of awareness, of calm, or space between stimulus and response, between urgent action, between thought and choice. Stillness is the pause that saves your future. And yet most people fear it. They fear what they will hear in the quiet. They fear who they will meet when everything else fades. Because silence strips away the noise you have used to define yourself. And underneath it all, you might discover that you do not know who you are without the proving, without the pretending, without the pain. But that discovery is where life begins. Not when you reach the goal. Not when you fix everything. But when you finally say, I am done abandoning myself in the name of achievement. So sit with yourself. In all your mess. In your contradictions. In the places that still ache. And listen. Not to fix. Not to escape. But to understand. Most of your life has been about effort. Doing. Striving. There is a version of you in 2025 that looks back at this moment and smiles. Because this is when it started, when you chose discipline over distraction, purpose over pressure. Keep listening. You are not just passing time, you are reshaping your future with every word. Now it is time for a new kind of strength being. Watching the urge to react and letting it pass. Feeling the impulse to prove and choosing peace instead. Not because you are passive, but because you are powerful enough to stay still. To not be hijacked by emotion. To not be seduced by urgency. To not chase what does not align. This is the kind of freedom no one can give you. You must earn it. Through presence. Through practice. Through refusing to abandon yourself, especially when no one claps, no one validates, no one understands. You keep showing up anyway. Because that is what integrity looks like. It is not grand gestures. It is not loud. It is doing the right thing when it would be easier not to. It is choosing the higher path, even when your lower self screams for attention. It is being able to look at yourself in the mirror not because you were perfect, but because you were honest. Because you did not numb the discomfort. Because you did not pretend to be above the pain. You went through it. You sat with it. You let it stretch you open. That is why you can stand tall now, not because you avoided the fire, but because you let it forge you. And now, your life begins to take a new shape. Not faster. Not flashier. But fuller. Every moment becomes a chance to return to self. Every trigger becomes a signal, not a threat. Every decision becomes a practice in alignment. You stop asking, what will they think, and start asking, what feels right in my body? You stop chasing peace and realize it was never somewhere else. It was always here. Beneath the noise. Beneath the narrative. Beneath the next version of success. That is when your nervous system exhales. That is when you stop gripping. That is when you stop fighting life and start dancing with it. Trusting its rhythms. Trusting your own. That is real freedom. And no one can take it from you. Because it does not live out there. It lives in your breath. In your boundaries. In your ability to remain yourself in a world that profits from your confusion. You are not confused. You are remembering who you are, what matters, what you no longer need to carry, what you are finally allowed to let go. There comes a moment in every journey where you must walk alone. Not because others abandoned you, but because your soul outgrew the space you once shared. Growth has a way of creating distance not out of arrogance, but out of necessity. The more deeply you know yourself, the more clearly you see where you do not belong. And that clarity is costly. You will lose comfort. You will lose connection. You will lose the illusion that everyone is meant to come with you. But what you gain is far more valuable. You gain sovereignty. You gain self-respect. You gain the ability to stand in a room full of people and not shrink. To make a decision that disappoints others but honors your truth. To say no without guilt. To walk away without closure. To keep becoming even when no one notices. That is spiritual adulthood. It is not glamorous. It is not celebrated. But it is the foundation of a peaceful life. Because when your sense of direction no longer depends on applause, you stop wandering. When your truth is not up for debate, you stop over-explaining. When you no longer outsource your value, you stop performing. And in that space, you meet yourself again, not the edited version, not the agreeable version, but the version who knows what matters in lives like it. That version of you is dangerous. Not because it harms others, but because it is no longer easy to manipulate. It cannot be guilt-stripped. It does not chase. It does not explain itself to people committed to misunderstanding. It does not beg to be seen. That version of you knows the people meant for me will never require me to betray myself to keep them. So you stop betraying yourself. You start choosing solitude over forced belonging. You start prioritizing peace over performance. You stop negotiating your boundaries in exchange for connection. And yes, it gets lonely. But there is a difference between being alone and being disconnected. When you are aligned, even silence feels rich. When you are whole, even solitude feels full. That is the shift. From needing people to fill you to being so grounded in yourself that every relationship becomes a gift, not a crutch. From needing validation to needing alignment. From needing attention to needing integrity. And the more you operate from that space, the more the world shifts around you. People treat you differently when you treat yourself like someone worth protecting. Opportunities flow differently when you stop hustling and start honoring. Your time expands when you stop trying to be everything for everyone and start being deeply committed to who you really are. It is not that you do more. It is that you do the right things. With the right energy. For the right reasons. And that alignment becomes your compass. It makes decision-making easier. You stop asking, is this allowed? And start asking, is this honest? You stop asking, will they approve? And start asking, will this make me proud when I am alone? That shift is everything. Because most people do not need more advice. They need more courage. The courage to trust what they already know. To act on what they already feel. To stop gathering permission for what their soul has already made clear. And that courage comes from repetition. From practicing self-trust. From doing the scary thing over and over until it no longer feels like rebellion, it feels like alignment. That is when you know you are free. Not when life gets easy. But when you get honest. When your peace is not based on external order, but internal truth. That is the root of real independence. And no one can give it to you. You must build it. Choice by choice. Boundary by boundary. Breath by breath. Stability is not found in the absence of problems. It is found in the presence of principles. Because life will never stop testing you. People will disappoint you. Plans will fall apart. What you thought was certain will unravel overnight. And in those moments, the only thing that determines your experience is who you are underneath the chaos. The habits you practiced when things were still calm. The boundaries you built before they were tested. The perspective you trained when things were still going your way. That is what carries you. Not hype. Not emotion. Not the illusion of control. But deep anchored clarity. That clarity does not come from reading more books or gathering more advice. It comes from going inward and staying there long enough to know what you stand on, what you believe in, what you refuse to trade for approval, attention, or temporary relief. Most people never find this clarity because they confuse stability with safety. They think stability means nothing ever changes. But that is comfort, not peace. Real peace exists even when everything changes. Real peace remains when expectations break, when people walk away, when the job ends, when the plan fails. Peace is what stays when everything else leaves. But to have that kind of peace, you must build your life differently. You must stop outsourcing your grounding to people who are still figuring themselves out. You must stop attaching your identity to outcomes you cannot control. You must stop building castles on opinions, trends, or applause. Instead, you become your own foundation. Not perfectly, but intentionally. One small choice at a time. You wake up and decide, I will not betray myself today. I will not abandon my truth for someone else's comfort. I will not chase what looks good if it does not feel honest. I will stand where I belong, even if I stand alone. That is stability. And that kind of stability gives you something rare: discernment. You stop reacting to every trigger. You stop needing to prove your point. You stop forcing people to understand. You learn to walk away without bitterness, to speak without urgency, to say no without a debate, because you know who you are and that knowing is louder than their confusion. You learn to hold tension without losing your center, to let people feel disappointed, confused, or even angry and still choose your own peace. That is not coldness. That is maturity. That is what happens when your validation comes from alignment, not acceptance. When your energy is guided by your principles, not the crowd. When your decisions are rooted in values, not emotional spikes. That is how you grow unshakable, not by numbing or pretending, but by becoming deeply honest with yourself and ruthlessly consistent with what you know to be true. That consistency builds something even deeper: trust. Not just from others, but from within. You become someone you can rely on. Someone who does not collapse under discomfort. Someone who does not make promises they will not keep to themselves. Someone who does not sell out their integrity for temporary comfort. And that trust becomes your sanctuary. Because once you trust yourself, the fear of life gets quieter. You do not need to control everyone. You do not need to have all the answers. You know that no matter what comes, you will respond, not react. You will reflect, not explode. You will realign, not retreat. That is how you become stable. You are not waiting for the world to behave. You are becoming the kind of person who stays steady even when it does not. From here, your relationships change. You stop choosing people based on how exciting they are and start noticing how safe your nervous system feels around them. You stop needing dramatic highs and realize that consistency is not boring, it is security. You stop chasing intensity and start craving intentionality. People cannot destabilize you if you are not using them to regulate your own emotions. So you stop making them responsible for your peace. You let them be human. You stop expecting perfection and start appreciating presence. And if someone is not able to meet you there, you do not beg. You bless and release. Because you know that your peace is not negotiable. Not anymore. This clarity moves into your work. You stop confusing business ends with impact. You stop saying yes to everything because you are afraid of missing out. You know that saying yes to everything is how you miss yourself. So you focus. You do fewer things better. You create from depth, not pressure. You stop measuring your worth by your output. You let go of urgency. You learn to sit with the discomfort of slowness. You let your craft breathe. Your work becomes an extension of your soul, not an escape from your feelings. That kind of work has weight. That kind of presence cannot be faked. And that kind of stability begins to attract the kind of life you always said you wanted but were too chaotic to receive. None of this happens by accident. It is built. Repetition. Ritual. Reflection. Refinement. You do not need more inspiration. You need more reminders. Daily ones. You need to remind yourself, I do not chase peace. I choose it. I do not seek approval. I align with my values. I do not control outcomes. I become someone who can adapt without collapsing. That is real power. The quiet kind. The kind you feel in a room where someone walks in and does not say much, but you feel the weight of who they are. Because they know who they are. Because they paid the price to be here. Because they have nothing left to prove and everything left to live. Let it go. Not because they apologized. Not because it was fair. Not because it stopped hurting. But because holding it is breaking you more than releasing it ever will. At some point you must decide your peace matters more than your pride. Your future matters more than being right. Your energy matters more than keeping the story alive. People will not always give you closure. The moment will not always resolve how you want it. Life will not always explain itself. But you do not need perfect endings to begin again. You do not need understanding to release the weight. You only need this moment and the courage to choose what is lighter. Because the truth is, most of the things that are draining you cannot be fixed. They must be dropped. The friendship that never felt mutual. The apology you keep rehearsing in your mind. The person who left without a word. The season that never closed properly. These are not errors in your story. They are exits. And if you are wise, you will honor them not with bitterness, but with boundaries. Not with obsession, but with release. Not with noise, but with the quiet confidence of someone who knows, I do not need everything to make sense to move forward. This is the part of healing that is not loud. It is not dramatic. It is not a grand breakthrough. It is subtle. Silent. Internal. It happens when you stop checking your page. When you delete the draft you were never meant to send. When you choose not to explain yourself one more time to someone who never really listened. When you breathe instead of react. When you walk away even though your ego still wants to stay and win. That is strength. That is power. And that is peace. Because peace is not the absence of pain. It is the ability to carry it without needing to bleed on others. It is knowing how to sit with discomfort without trying to fix it, numb it, or assign blame for it. It is saying, this hurt me. And I will heal anyway. That shift, that quiet inner shift, is how you stop being the story's victim and start being its editor. You rewrite your role. You choose what the pain will mean. And you no longer give it the pen. But none of this is easy. Because we are wired for closure. We want neat endings. We want people to come back and say, I see it now. You were right. I should have done better. We want circumstances to circle back and explain why it all had to happen that way. But life rarely works like that. Life is more poetic than logical. It does not tie everything in bows. Sometimes it rips the page and gives you a new chapter without warning. And that is your invitation not to solve, but to surrender. To accept that peace is something you build internally, not something you wait for externally. To accept that you are allowed to end stories without villains. That not everything unresolved needs a resolution. Some things are simply part of your becoming. Some people were only meant to show you what you no longer want. Some seasons existed only to bring you back to yourself. If you found this video valuable and meaningful, please consider sharing it. You never know, it might help someone who truly needs it. And if you let it, that kind of acceptance becomes your freedom. You stop needing people to circle back to validate your experience. You stop over-explaining your boundaries. You stop keeping score. You simply live fully, honestly, and without apology. You pour into the people who pour back. You focus on what is alive, not what is missing. You invest in what grows you, not what drains you. And suddenly your life feels lighter, not because everything is perfect, but because you are no longer carrying the weight of things that are not yours to hold. That is when peace becomes not just an experience, but a posture. A way of standing in the world that says, I do not chase closure. I create clarity within. I do not force understanding. I offer compassion and move forward. I do not beg for love. I become someone who embodies it. I do not try to fix the past. I protect my future by choosing differently. That is the kind of energy that shifts your entire trajectory. That is when you realize the work is not about them anymore. It is not about the conversation you never had, or the apology they never gave, or the recognition you never received. It is about you now. Who you are when no one is watching. What you choose when no one validates. How you treat yourself when no one is there to remind you of your worth. That is the work. To keep choosing truth when fantasy is easier. To keep choosing grace when bitterness feels more justified. To keep showing up for yourself even when the world does not seem to care. Because the world is watching more than you think. The people who once ignored you are now paying attention to your consistency. The opportunities that once passed over you are now circling back. The version of you who once doubted everything now walks with quiet certainty. That is not magic. That is integrity over time. That is healing without needing to announce it. That is growing without needing to prove it. That is choosing freedom without waiting for permission. And that is what makes you powerful, not the absence of pain, but the refusal to stay bound by it. Not the perfection of your path, but the resilience with which you walk it. Not how many people see you, but how deeply you see yourself. That is the shift. That is the new standard. That is what builds the kind of peace that no apology could ever give you. Because it was never theirs to give. It was always yours to claim. Walking. You do not need them to get it. You just need to get it yourself. Because you are no longer trying to convince the world. You are trying to stay true to the person you promised yourself you would become. And that kind of promise is sacred. That kind of vow changes how you show up. You speak slower. You move with intention. You say no without panic. You leave without slamming doors. You let people think what they want, because you are too busy becoming what you need. That is the difference between reaction and response. Between proving and embodying. Between noise and clarity. And the more you live like this, the less you need to explain. You realize that people will misunderstand you no matter how clearly you speak. They will project, assume, distort. And it is not your job to fix their lens. It is your job to clean your own. To see yourself clearly. to move from your truth, to show up in alignment with what you value, even if no one else is clapping. Especially then, because that is how you know it is real. When you are no longer driven by praise, when you are no longer shaken by criticism, when you are no longer molding your life to be palatable, you are just living fully, honestly, unapologetically. And that kind of life will confuse some people. Let it. They were never meant to understand a path that was not theirs to walk. Your job is not to make sense to everyone. Your job is to be faithful to your own evolution. So now your priorities shift. You stop chasing. You stop proving. You stop explaining. And instead, you start refining your focus, your habits, your circle, your pace. You stop rushing. You stop overcommitting. You stop saying yes to what dilutes your power. You learn to say not today, not anymore, not at this cost. And that kind of boundary creates space for your creativity to breathe, for your heart to rest, for your spirit to catch up with your body. You stop sprinting. You start walking. Not slowly, but surely. Not lazily, but deliberately. That is how you build a life that feels like yours. Not just from the outside, but from the inside. A life that feels quiet, not because it is empty, but because it is full. Full of presence. Full of meaning. Full of decisions that align with your future, not your fear. And what you realize along the way is that the more peace you build, the less tolerance you have for chaos. The more wholeness you cultivate, the less space you have for people who thrive in dysfunction. Not out of judgment, but out of protection. Not because you are better, but because you are finally being honest about what you can hold without breaking. That honesty changes everything. You stop calling it loyalty when it is really self-minus abandonment. You stop calling it love when it is really attachment. You stop calling it support when it is really sacrifice. And you start choosing differently. You start choosing relationships that do not require you to shrink. Work that does not require you to disconnect. Rest that does not require you to feel guilty. You start choosing alignment over comfort. And what you lose in convenience, you gain in clarity. That clarity becomes your compass. It guides your decisions, your language, your leadership. You no longer lead with force, but with presence. You no longer dominate, but you influence through consistency. You no longer command attention, but you carry energy that speaks for itself. And people feel it. They do not always understand it, but they feel it. The calm in your voice, the steadiness in your posture, the confidence that comes from doing the hard, invisible work when no one was watching. That is what builds the kind of foundation no storm can shake. That is what earns you the kind of freedom no money can buy. That is what makes you the kind of person who does not need to raise their voice to be heard, or raise their hand to be respected. Your presence speaks loud enough. So you keep building. Brick by brick. Choice by choice. Not rushing the process. Not skipping the foundation. Not trying to impress anyone with how fast you rise. Because you know what rises fast can fall just as quickly. What looks good can still be hollow. But what is built slow? What is built true? That lasts. That holds. That becomes legacy. And your legacy is not about being remembered for what you achieved. It is about being remembered for how you lived. How you made people feel. How you carried your peace. How you honored your own path. That is the kind of life you are building now. Quiet. rooted, unshakable, and finally yours. There is a version of you that no longer needs to be admired to feel valuable. That no longer needs to be the best to feel worthy. That no longer needs to win every argument, prove every point, or be the smartest person in the room. That version of you is not weak. It is free. Because it no longer needs the mask, the performance, the emotional costume designed to survive a world that rewards the loudest, the brightest, the most polished. At some point, the goal shifts. From being impressive to being whole. From being liked to being real. From being driven to being grounded. And in that shift, you lose something, but what you gain is far more powerful. You lose the constant noise. The internal push. The never-ending chase. And in its place, you gain presence. You gain space. You gain the strength to sit with yourself without flinching. That is not apathy. That is not resignation. That is evolution. Because the person who no longer needs to prove themselves becomes the most dangerous in the room, not to others, but to everything that once held them back. They become immune to manipulation, to shallow praise, to emotional bait, because they know who they are now. Not in theory, not in performance, but in practice. In silence. In solitude. In the way they walk away from drama without needing a final word. This is where the real life begins. Not the curated one. Not the optimized one. The real one. The one where you laugh more easily. Cry more honestly. Speak less, but mean more. The one where your yes is rooted in joy and your no is not followed by guilt. The one where you no longer need to be everything to everyone because you have finally become enough for yourself. And this is not about perfection. It is not about arriving. It is about aligning. It is about returning again and again to the version of you that feels like home. The one that does not chase. The one that does not compare. The one that no longer believes that love must be earned or rest must be justified. It is the you that remembers you were never broken, only buried. Under expectation. Under comparison. Under stories that were never yours. And now, you are unlearning them. Not overnight. But moment by moment. Thought by thought. Choice by choice. And with that unlearning comes discomfort. Because when you stop performing, people get confused. When you stop overgiving, people get offended. When you stop pretending, people feel threatened. Not because you are doing something wrong, but because you are doing something rare. You are living with honesty, with congruence, with stillness. In a world addicted to noise, stillness is disruptive. In a world addicted to attention, quiet is revolutionary. In a world addicted to hustle, resting without guilt is an act of rebellion. But you rebel anyway. Not to prove a point, but to preserve your peace. Not to be different, but to be whole. You rest. You walk slowly. You make eye contact. You breathe fully. You stop multitasking and start listening. You stop numbing and start noticing. And in that noticing, life becomes rich again. The coffee tastes better. The music feels deeper. The air feels sacred. Not because the world changed, but because you did. And when the world does not reward your stillness, you keep choosing it anyway. Because you know now that fulfillment is not found in the next milestone, the next project, the next approval. It is found in this breath, in this step, in this sacred, unremarkable moment. You realize that everything you were chasing, the peace, the confidence, The belonging was never out there. It was always inside, waiting for you to slow down long enough to notice. And now you are here, no longer seeking the light. You are becoming it. No longer begging for permission. You are giving it to yourself. No longer following someone else's script. You are writing your own. Slowly. Deliberately. Authentically. That authenticity changes everything. You start saying less, but people feel you more. You start doing less, but everything you touch carries weight. You start showing up differently, not louder, but clearer. Not tougher, but truer. And people feel safer around you. Not because you are perfect, but because you are present. Not because you have all the answers, but because you have stopped pretending to. You live in the questions now. And you are okay not knowing. You are okay not rushing. You are okay being in minus between. That kind of okayness is a superpower. Because it makes you unstoppable. Not in a way that breaks through walls, but in the way that no longer needs walls. In the way that adapts. That bends. That flows. That trusts. And trust, you realize, is the most powerful thing you can carry. Trust in yourself. Trust in your path. Trust that what is meant will find you, and what is not will fall away without force. So you live. Freely. Honestly. Softly, but with unshakable strength. You laugh without performing. You love without clinging. You speak without pretending. And even when life hits you hard, you do not fall apart, you ray minus center. You return. You remember, I am not here to be perfect. I am here to be whole. I am not here to be understood by all. I am here to understand myself. I am not here to finish fast. I am here to finish true. And in that truth, everything shifts. Life becomes simpler. Not easier, but simpler. The noise fades. The pace slows. The depth increases. And finally you feel home, not in a place, but in your presence. You already know what you need to do. Deep down you always have. You have read the books, heard the podcasts, collected the quotes, watched the videos. You are not lacking insight. You are lacking space, stillness, courage to trust what you already know. Because the truth is this: most of your healing, most of your progress, most of your breakthrough will come when you stop seeking and start applying. When you stop analyzing and start aligning. When you stop needing clarity from outside and start obeying the wisdom within. You already know what no longer serves you. You already feel where your energy leaks. You already sense the weight of what you keep holding on to just because it is familiar. So let this be the moment you stop. You stop delaying what you know you must release. You stop shrinking just to keep peace. You stop waiting for the world to slow down and start creating your own rhythm. You stop hoping for permission and start giving yourself the authority to choose a different path. And no, it will not be perfect. You will stumble. You will doubt. You will still get triggered. But this time you will not spiral. You will pause. You will remember. You will return. And returning, you will realize that is all mastery really is. Not perfection, but the choice to return faster. With less shame. With more honesty. With deeper clarity. You will feel the anger rise and choose not to feed it. You will feel the urge to explain and choose silence instead. You will feel the pull to hustle and choose peace. And that choice repeated enough will rewire your entire life. Because your nervous system will learn I am safe. I am supported. I am no longer at war with myself. That is the end game. Not more. Not bigger. Not faster. Just truer. Lighter. Freer. You do not need to fix every part of your past. You do not need to map out every detail of your future. You just need to walk honestly through your present, and the path will reveal itself one quiet step at a time. And yes, you will outgrow people, places, versions of yourself that once felt like home. That is the cost of choosing your peace. That is the cost of living from alignment instead of survival. But what you lose in noise, you gain in depth, in clarity, in soul minus level quiet that no amount of likes, attention, or achievement can replicate. That quiet becomes your compass, your strength, your offering. People will feel it before they hear it. They will not know why, but your presence will carry a weight. Because it is no longer borrowed, no longer fractured, no longer dependent on being seen. You have seen yourself. And now you walk differently. You lead differently. You rest without guilt. You love without fear. You speak without performing. And when things fall apart, as they sometimes will, you do not panic. You breathe. You return. You remember, I have already built peace. I do not need to chase it. That kind of inner stillness cannot be taught. It must be chosen, nurtured, protected. You protect it by saying no to what drains you, by saying yes to what restores you, by removing what is loud but empty, by honoring what is quiet but full. You protect it by trusting your pace, even when others move faster, by listening to your body, even when your mind argues, by believing that peace is not a reward for perfection, but a birthright you claim through intention. And when you live like that, everything changes. Not because life suddenly becomes easier, but because you are no longer walking through it in resistance. You are moving with it. You are breathing with it. You are allowing the seasons, the losses, the pauses, the uncertainty to be part of your unfolding, not a threat to your worth. You begin to see that nothing real can be rushed. That nothing worth keeping requires self abandonment. That nothing sacred ever arrives with shame. So here you are. Not fixed, but free. Not complete, but conscious. Not finished, but faithfully becoming. And now you begin again. Not because you are lost, but because the path ahead is different than the one behind you. Now you live. Not to prove, not to earn, not to outrun your past, but to fully embody your present. And as you live, you teach. Not with words, but with the way you show up. With the way you hold boundaries without drama. With the way you laugh deeply. Listen fully. Leave quietly when you are not respected. Stay fully when you are. You teach through the way your life feels in your body. The way you make others feel safe to be themselves. The way you make space, not just for achievement, but for relevance. That is your legacy. Not the volume of your success, but the vibration of your presence. Not the brilliance of your mind, but the clarity of your heart. So go now, not with urgency, but with reverence. For the fact that you are still here. Still growing. Still learning how to walk with grace. Still building the kind of life that you do not need to escape from. And know this, you do not need to master everything at once. You just need to choose one truth. One practice. One breath. And return to it until it becomes your nature. Until it becomes your anchor. Until it becomes your way. That is how transformation happens, not in one grand moment, but in small, honest ones repeated with love. Welcome home. If this message stirred something in you, don't let it fade. Write one thing down that you'll start doing this week. 2025 doesn't magically change anything you do. And your future begins the moment you decide to move, even just a little.